You can use various tools for shear scraping or specific tools like this one that are just made for shear scraping. And shear scraping in general will leave less surface damage than traditional scraping, but often can leave micro ripples on the surface. But both traditional and shear scraping are both used in similar situations.
I'd also like to mention that there is a difference between shear scraping and shear cutting. And for simplicity's sake, shear cutting is mostly riding the bevel. But in this video, I'm mostly going to talk about shear scraping. I'd also like to talk about something that may arise, is that there has been differences in the spelling of shear scraping, either Shear, S-H-E-A-R, or S-H-E-E-R. And both of these have, I guess, pretty good claim. I just go with S-H-E-A-R, and it's more of a physical cutting act. As far as EER, it's more transparent and sheer, like the shavings coming off, as in like sheer curtains or something like that. So I tend to go with EAR, but there is some debate about it. So if you know what I mean.
When you choose to use shear scraping, all depends on your situation. Is the wood hard? Is it soft wood? Is it interlocking grain, big porous grain? Is it wet wood? Is it kiln dried wood? How far do I need to reach over the tool rest in this project? In my opinion, all these things should be considered before you decide on what method or technique that you're going to use.
For example, when I turn a spindle, I'll use a skew rather than shear scraping because it's much faster.
And if you haven't noticed already, I'm making a handle for this shear scraping tool out of African Paduc or Paddock, however you'd like to pronounce it. And it's such a beautiful wood, especially when you put a finish on it. It's kind of sad that eventually it turns brown, you know?
I'd also like to mention this is my first video I've made that's dedicated towards wood turning techniques, and in no way is this an absolute set in stone guide to shear scraping. There are many other ways of scraping and cutting. These are just some of my methods that I use.
There's the common phrase, there's always more than one way to skin a cat.
Oh, I also forgot to mention earlier that you'll want to take into consideration your lathe speed.
In general, the faster the speed, the better surface finish you're going to get. But make sure that your lathe speed is within the min and max safety ranges for the diameter of the piece that you're turning. And always listen to your gut feeling. If it doesn't feel right, then just don't do it. Now, as far as presenting the tool to the workpiece or your wood turning, in general, a shear scraping cut, the tool is turned, or the cutting edge that is presented to the tool is turned at a 45-degree angle, which this tool does for me. It positions the cutting edge of the cutter at a 45-degree angle to the oncoming wood. Here you have a bowl with a headstock and a tailstock and a tool rest, and there's the center point and the wood's coming around. And the tool is here at a 45-degree angle. Traditional scrapers, as you can see here, are at 90-degree to the oncoming wood. And shavings will come off in little spirals, thin spirals, when it is at a 45-degree angle, which is a slicing cut of the wood fibers as opposed to the 90-degree presented traditional cut scraping with a burr. I find that dragging the shear cutting gives you more control, but one of the benefits to shear scraping is being able to go in either direction because of the slicing of the fiber.
You can also sharpen or lessen the presented cutting angle. For example, this tool is made specifically with 245
degree angles on the bottom, I can still sharpen that angle to say 55 degrees by turning it more on its side, which is more narrow, less aggressive on the wood fibers, but it is more slow going. And with shear scraping, you can get away without riding the bevel, which could burnish the wood surface. It's another added benefit to shear scraping. This is ash wood, and it has a mixture of like hard and soft grain in it. So shear scraping, in my opinion, is a really good technique to use on rough grain or tear out that could especially happen on this species of wood because of the unsupported fibers. You can also see here that the shavings are much different than a traditional scraper, that they're little, very thin, curlicule peels because of that 45-degree angled slicing cut. As in this round carbide cutter turned on its side at a 45 angle. Or you can even use a point tool or a pyramid tool as a shear scraper. You'll just have to bring the handle down far so I can achieve that shear scraping angle, which I'll periodically do, especially on non-flat surfaces to avoid any catches. And this has a really flat tip instead, or a straight cutting edge instead of round. As in this bowl gouge, which you can also shear scrape with, that is mostly my bottoming bowl gouge that I use for the bottom of bowls or hollow forms. But you can turn this at a 45-degree angle. And I'm also doing a push cut rather than a dragging or a pull cut here because of the bevel angle on my tool and my bed of my lathe. It was more comfortable for me to do a push cut here. And you can see here, by doing a bowl gouge shear push cut, the surface is not as smooth as before.
The surface isn't bad, I just think I can get it a little bit better. All depends on how much you want to sand.
But it could mean that my lathe speed was too low, the tool was not sharp, or I was pushing too fast. I'm now using the tip of this tool, which is angled and at a different profile than the rest of the shaft of the tool. So I raised the handle high in order to get the right angle. And that made it so I can move the tool rest closer. The other great thing about shear scraping is that it slices the wood at an angle, so there's not a lot of tear out, and you can go in either direction, but you can get into small spaces because of that angled position of the cutter, which makes it great for like cleaning up tight places like here where I'm trying to clean up some of the dye. And you can use other tools, like this is a spear scraper, which really gets into those tight spots, or any bowl gouge would work as well. And here is the bowl, shear scraped, and no sanding, which is probably equivalent to a 320 grit sandpaper. Next, I'll finish up the bottom of the bowl and then finish with a shear cut. So far, I like this tool and it's doing a great job, and it'll be a nice addition to my shop. I have received many comments from people as to how to use this type of hollowing tool or shear scraping hollowing tool. And that is the reason why I bought this, for hollowing out vessels and having a far reach over the tool rest, which is why I made the handle so long. However, the front end of this tool is pretty heavy and it's a little off balance, and the handle is still a little bit light. So I'd like to balance the weight out a little bit more by adding in some weight to the end. I'm just going to drill a hole, I don't know, about 6 inches deep, and then add a bunch of these non-lead fishing sinkers in there, and that should do the job. I did finish the bowl by sanding up to 600 grit and then applying an acrylic finish.
I am really happy with this tool. It came out really, really nice. I know I say that a lot in my videos, but I really do like this tool. Like I had mentioned, it is very top heavy, and you probably could have used this tool without the handle. Shear scraping, it is a fabulous technique to use on, just about everything when you're finally done, your last finishing cut. And the bowl came out great. Very, very nice. You can see the really sharp cut line, cleaned up all of the dye. If you're not into these kind of tutorial videos like this, I will have project videos coming up next. It's a busy time for me, so I usually don't put out as many videos in these next couple of months. For those of you that are interested, I always get a lot of questions and comments about the tools that I use in my videos, and do you recommend a certain lathe, certain tools for beginners, how I want to make bowls, things like that. And I now have an Amazon shop if you're interested. You just have to click on that link, go to my Amazon page, buy something that you normally would buy there. It doesn't cost you anything extra. I just get a little percentage or a little commission. And for those that have already purchased from my Amazon site, I really want to thank you, and thank you for the support. I really, really appreciate it, and it really helps me to continue making these videos, which I really enjoy doing. So as always, please subscribe if you haven't, and until next time, stay safe in your shop at all times. Take care. Thank you.